Reality makes so much sense, doesn't it? I mean, you see all the building blocks, and they all add up to reality. Perfect, simple, easy answer. But what if it wasn't? I mean, you have water, and you put some salt into it, and the freezing point changes. um, okay, whatever. It's still building blocks building up to a scenario that makes sense, correct? You just, the salt added into the configuration. Let's just write that off in a little rule over here. You know, compounds. I mean, there's a reason underneath. It makes sense. Okay. Uh, but however, could there be top-down forces? Emergence really broke me. When I heard about emergence, the idea of building blocks working together to create seemingly a new building block, but truly that building block didn't exist. That created the esotericism that's messing with me all the way up to now. What I'm trying to say is, emergence is one of those incredible sciences, observations, a field of study, the idea of what really is a building block. The short answer is there are no building blocks. That everything flows. That's kind of like the idea of emergence. All these differently charged spaces with energy interacting with other charged spaces with energy, but also considering the top-down effect of reality. Somehow things like salt or pressure can change the tipping point of a phenomenal change in the building blocks in the observable macro world, right? The idea of atoms, the idea of the bottom up design makes so much sense. Everything has a building block that comes from below it. That's where the rule emerges from. You can see it. That's the idea of classical science. But emergence is almost philosophical because it basically proposes that the reality that you're in influences the nature of the objects within it. Okay. Okay. It's downward pressure. It's the idea that the setup causes the organization of the lower materials. Okay, well, imagine this. There's a universe, right? But there's no heaviest atom yet. But then conditions arise in which a star gets so dense, there's an iron atom, or there's the heaviest atom now to form. And it was never there before. This is the idea of downward pressure. There's a nature in reality that would allow for this iron atom or the heaviest atoms. But it's being altered so dramatically at the beginning of the universe. The Big Bang, the heat, the many different stars. There's no rocks yet. Everything that came out of the Big Bang, all the energy that formed into particles. That's another thing. I mean, before, it took a few, there were different moments when the first particles theoretically emerged, when the universe would be in an ideal state for that separation of energy into physical matter, into being here. All the laws of physics lining up for it to exist. Now, classical science is like, okay, there are a lot of universal constants. They all work together in tandem to make the world as we know it, and we're searching for those constants. The downward effect of reality, the idea of emergence, almost suggests, from what I can tell, that it's like some universal constants are actually being manipulated by the weight of the universe. Like, there are some things that can't come into existence until an evolution occurs. Okay. It's kind of, okay, all right, let me back up. So why would that be the conclusion that, universal constants are actually shifting around? It's kind of like, think about how we see the water example and the salt, or just changing the pressure. It's so obvious what's happening. We can make the adjustment in the model that we have to account for the new physical observation that we're witnessing. But what if we never witnessed it? What if somehow, we never witnessed the phenomenon that changes the property of what we're exploring, the idea of water freezing, turning from liquid to solid, all these ideas about what's going to happen. What if there are factors that don't exist to push or influence what's happening to the matter at different points in the universe? Like before there were actually iron atoms. Could you, at that point in time, make a clear assessment of all the laws of the universe at that state? No, probably not. It's so weird. Could you find the evidence that there would be iron? Could you find the evidence of any of that? Or would the universal constants, would the world you observe be missing it? Would it just be missing it? This is what emergence really suggests. The idea that there are no building blocks. The idea that all these, I don't even know what to call it, energy fluctuations are causing reality to appear when the influence is right. When the top-down influence is correct. And the bottom-up influence. The idea of emergence is that it's all going in a circle. There are small building blocks, but then there are emergent super patterns. And that's kind of like what these last two podcasts have been, talking about all the patterns, how they're made of small things, how they're configured in a weird agreement stance, but they're not optimal. And the agreements can change, the building blocks shift around. Suddenly you have a whole new structure. And what shifted? The unbalance of the scenario got better. And that's the idea that there is a nature to everything. But emergence is like saying that there is no nature. That the nature is in shift. That the environment can influence the nature. Like if water and salt mix, it doesn't freeze at the same point it used to. And you would have to do a lot of work to reverse that. Or, you'd have to filter out the salt. But that's the thing. Reality shifted. The nature of the object shifted. Or at least it looks like that. It's like, okay, maybe it's just a rule of the universe, blah, blah, blah. But could you predict the rules? Can you really predict all the rules in any given state if there are things that are influenced top-down wise? Like, you think of the world as, okay, everything builds up from the ground up. There are building blocks. It's like I was saying before, computer agents in a simulated world. There are all these ideas and they have properties and there's consistent rules and they all self-organize and head towards gradient descent, balance out. But yeah, emergence is like the idea that the form the matter takes is, there's no consistent pattern to that. It's like the energy in the room, how it's organized creates the shapes that appear in the reality, right? So the only thing that can be there is the energy and the magnitude of energy at any given spot and the way that represents itself in reality in accordance to all the other energy and the laws that might actually be in flux. Like there might be laws that are just in flux. It doesn't even make sense. I don't know why. Well, I do. It's the idea that the universe is like shifting in from unbalance to balance, right? It's the change. And in that change, yeah, comes all the self-organization, all the rules, all the, I don't even, yeah. It's weird. So I guess I am trying to say there are rules, but they're just shifting. Like the rule of how intense this affects something, it can be shifted if the state of the universe is slightly different. You know? A top-down effect, a nature that hasn't been witnessed just because of the universe. But, like, that's what you want to say is happening. It could just be that nature is shifting, though. There'd be rules to this, how it shifts, but it's just the game would change. The world would change. The physical reality would be in shifting motion. Like what you observe, what the actual rules are, would be shifting with as time goes forward, as all the energy goes to balance, I guess. It's like, instead of a whole bunch of computer agents working to self-organize into its most optimal way, it's like a whole bunch of energy that's like related to each other in a very physics-like sense, but the rules are interlinked and non-linear. You get different answers depending on the state of the universe. There's not one yeah. So, yeah. But then what energy is shifting? You know, we can measure it. You can be like, you know, this is how much energy is in a spot. But ultimately, the main point here is like the idea of rules you can't see until the system evolves into a state in which that rule becomes relevant. Like maybe it's always there, but maybe it's so microscopic because it hasn't emerged into a phenomenon that's like observable. But I don't even know. But that's emergence. That whole idea really messed with my head, for sure. It's just so... It basically top-down effect. You know, you think about reality being built of a grouping of like, you know, atoms make molecules, right? And molecules, blah, 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 chemicals and macroscopic items and gravity and blah, blah, blah. It all adds upward. But the idea that, you know, it could be going downward, it just breaks my mind. It's like, what does that describe? What's the actual, like, description of the universe at that point? A whole bunch of universal constants being, like, changed? But, I mean, think about what I'm even saying. I'm saying, like, somehow... I don't know. There's no one out there saying that universal constants shift. Not that I know of. I'll probably look up online and be like, there's a fringe group of theorists out there who say there's change in the universal constants, but I don't even know. I'm just thinking like the one major point of like interest is like the stuff that emerges just because of the crazy state of the universe, stuff that's never been witnessed. You know, it all happened at the beginning of time, and it's all theoretical. We use all of our, we're just projecting into the past what could have happened. But it makes sense, like, you can't have this atom until the star gets, like, dense enough. So if you think about it in that sense, like, what other rules haven't emerged? What other things are being held by the reality that's here and could change? Like, maybe it's not really, like, changing universal constants, but it's more like emerging rules that may have never mattered before. Like fundamental, you know, I don't know. It's I don't know. Maybe I'm taking emergence too far, and really it's just a whole bunch of small agents that create a system, and that system is the thing that changes, and the top-down influences are just kind of an illusion because it's a system that hasn't reached optimization. I don't know. Yeah, it all leads to the idea that, the big world we're in, it's it's made of the small world, and the small world, like, is influenced by the big world. It really looks like that, like top-down influence, like, you know, yeah. Ramble. That's real. That's all. I'm not gonna go 40 or an hour into this one. This was just because I don't really even know how to explain emergence just yet. The top-down influence on nature, kind of like, items in nature revealing different nature, like forms taking different characteristics just because of the top-down effect. It's not like you're ever going to see that in real life. It's not like you're going to change physics right below you, but like top-down emergence, a weird phenomenon to think about. It messes with my whole computer simulation idea. It makes me want to turn it from computer agents into the series of universal constants that are not really constant. They're non-linear and they're connected. And then, whatever forms out of that, or whatever the forms can do to each other, is dependent on the shape of the universe, so to speak. Where all the energy is sitting, the weight of it all, the distribution. And then I don't even know. It's a weird idea. Or would that be in the background? Like, how would they? Anyway, that's all.